It's been 3 decades since Sony debuted PlayStation 1 and changed the gaming landscape forever. Sony launched PS1 for Japan in 1994 and next year for the rest of the world. Now before this, Sony had never even developed a video game, let alone a full-fledged console system. Nonetheless, Sony entered the console market and introduced 3D gaming to the masses and kick-started the video game revolution. So guys, let's take a look back at the history of Sony's first gaming console that laid the foundation of a gaming empire. Believe it or not, it all started with a deal that went sour.
Alright, we're gonna make a lot of money together.
After the crash of gaming market, Nintendo slowly rebuilt the gaming industry and created a niche for itself. Sony, on the other hand, had no direct involvement in the gaming industry. Rather, Sony made components for other consoles like the sound chip for Nintendo's Famicom. As a part of a joint venture between Sony and Nintendo, the two companies started working on a CD ROM version of Nintendo's console. Sony revealed the Super Famicom with a built-in CD ROM at the 1991's CES that incorporated Green Book technology called PlayStation. However, a day after the reveal, Nintendo announced that it would be breaking its partnership with Sony and opted to go with Philips instead, using the same technology. The deal came to a halt since the two companies could not come to an agreement as to how the revenue would be shared. The breaking of the partnership infuriated then Sony president Norio Oga. Oga appointed Ken Kutaragi with the responsibility of developing Sony's console that could rival Nintendo. In 1992, a high-powered meeting was called to decide the fate of the PlayStation project. Meeting had Oga, Ken and Sony's board members. Now, not everyone in Sony liked the idea of venturing into the gaming market. At the meeting, Ken showed the new proprietary CD-ROM based system that had the capabilities of playing video games in 3D. However, it was not enough to win over support. The concept was very near to being scrapped, but Ken reminded Oga of how Nintendo had humiliated the company in front of the whole world. Thus, in order to safeguard the project, Ken's team was shifted to Sony Music, a completely separate financial entity owned by Sony. This move turned out to be a blessing in disguise. It is here that Ken Kutaragi got access to Sony Music's expertise with regards to manufacturing, marketing and producing of discs. And now at this point, let's get the context of why Sony's CD-ROM based system was such a big deal for the gaming industry. So before the release of Sony's PlayStation, console games were primarily cartridge based and those cartridges were rather expensive to manufacture. These also had limited storage which hindered the development of 3D games, since these motion video games required large files. In contrast, CD-ROMs not only had more storage, they could interlace audio, data and files simultaneously, which gave the Sony's console a definite edge. By 1994, Sony was ready to launch the console in Japanese market, but there was one slight problem. Usually the manufacturer of the game console releases some of the best games for their respective systems. But unlike Nintendo or Sega, Sony did not have an in-house game development studio at that time. This is where the third-party publishers came to the rescue of Sony. These developers were attracted to Sony's console due to its 3D capabilities and use of CD-ROMs. The project eventually hit Japanese stores in December 1994 and gained massive sales due to its lower price point than its competitor, the Sega Saturn. The popularity of the console spread even more after its release worldwide in North America and Europe. A year after the PlayStation's launch, Nintendo also released their own 3D gaming console, N64, but Nintendo stuck with the cartridge format, which inevitably led to its downfall. Without third-party support, the N64 had a decent library, and some of those titles are considered the best games of the time. It simply wasn't enough to keep up with the PlayStation. Even after Sony released the PlayStation 2 in 2000, the company continued to support the original PlayStation, encouraging developers to continue publishing and developing for PS1 for another 6 years. In 2006, Sony ceased manufacturing the original PlayStation, giving the beloved console a 12-year life cycle and ending it as the first console to sell 100 million units. Being rejected by Nintendo turned out to be one of the greatest things that happened to Sony.